Okay, so one of the most fundamental things about my job as the registrar is to make sure that I am following a federal law called the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. And everyone associated with our institution needs to know what FERPA is and what it means and how it affects your work as a tutor or a peer assistant or a peer mentor. Okay? Oh, it doesn't work. Okay. That's right. That's what Carol is for. Okay, what is FERPA? FERPA it's a federal law, so every college and university in the United States who receives federal funding, mostly in the form of financial aid, has to adhere to this law, the FERPA law. And the primary aspects of the law is that it protects the privacy of your records as students, gives you rights to review those records, and gives you an opportunity to contest anything in those records if you need to. Okay, so the privacy we'll talk a lot about. The right to review your records is really sort of some old school thinking. This law's been around since 1974. And we used to have files, paper files on every student that came to our institutions. And so if a student said, "What do you have on me in your file?" we would pull out a file and show it to you. Most of our stuff is electronic now, most of which you already have access to through your MyClackamas account. I've been doing this job for 8 or 9 years. I've had one request from a student who wanted to see their record information because you do have that access already. But it is your legal right to ask about information that is stored about you. You also have the right to say, "I don't think this is accurate about me, I need to fix it." Most of the requests we get about that are about what? Grades. Those are from your instructors. You have to do that with them. We don't actually have any role in that whatsoever. That's facilitated between you and your instructor. So. Okay, thanks, Carol. So the essence, especially for me, of the Privacy Act is that we can't disclose information about you to anybody who asks, right? Just because somebody comes to us and says, "I want to know," and I'm going to pick on the people I already know, so sorry. I want to know information about Brandy. Just because they ask doesn't mean we're going to provide it. Okay? It's our job, all of your jobs as tutors, to make sure you are protecting the information that you will have access to or know about other students, because that's the law that we protect that. Okay? And I'll go into some details about that. Unless we have your consent, and I'll go into that too. And that you have a permission to inspect your own records. Okay, what is an educational record? An educational record is any record, with certain exceptions, maintained by us as an institution that has information about you or your name on it, or any record that's directly related to you as a student, which can or make you individually identified. Basically, this is everything. All right? If we as an institution are collecting information about you, that's an educational record. If we go to a restaurant with a bunch of our peers and talk about you, but don't say your name, but share enough information that other people would be able to figure out it was you, we've individually identified you. We can't do that either. So what we have to do is really make sure we're protecting the identity of you and the information about you, that it's not released to somebody. Okay? You with me so far? Or are you completely bored? With you. Excellent response. Okay. Next. Okay. So actually, educational records can be in handwriting, in print, in tapes, podcasts, computer. Anybody here even know what microfilm is? Oh, good. That makes me feel better. I had microfiche on here. I took it off. I replaced it with podcast just to try to sound hip. So those are an educational record can be in any format. It doesn't matter. Some people think it still needs to be on that paper. It doesn't matter. Okay, what is directory information? So you have an orange bookmark in front of you that talks about directory information. Every college and university in the United States, in order to adhere to FERPA, has to create what's called directory information, which is information we will release without your consent. This is information we would share if somebody called on Brandy's behalf and said, "I need to know if Brandy is enrolled." We would say, yes or no, full-time, part-time. That's information we have deemed as not harmful to Brandy if we were to say that information, right? The federal government tells us there's a whole list of things we can choose from regarding what we can and can't release, because there are some things we absolutely cannot release, right? What's information we would never release about you?
Social Security number.
Have you heard this before, Tara? maybe. Social Security number, we would never release that about you, right? So that's an example of something we would never release no matter what. Some schools release a lot of information, right? Our information at Clackamas on your bookmark is only 4 things. Central Oregon is like 8 or 9. Portland Community College is nothing. They don't have any directory information. They have decided under FERPA that they won't release any information if anyone asks. Their registrar has tried for years to fix this because it makes it really hard for people to navigate the business of being a college student. So we're kind of in the middle of the road with R4. R4 are, good. R4 are enrollment status, which is a yes or no question, full-time, part-time. We will verify if you received a certificate or degree. We do outsource this now to another party, but we do release that without your consent. Your residency status, which is a tuition question. What are you paying? Are you paying in-state or out-of-state? What you're studying, and athletic participation, including height and weight. Do we have any athletes in here? Why do we do you know why we do this? Why it's directory information?
Possibly just see what you're outside, like what you're doing.
We print programs at athletic events with that information in it. Have you guys ever gone to an athletic event and you have the program and you have the athlete's name and it says their height and weight? Rather than getting your permission every time you compete, we made it directory information. So again, this is information we will release without your permission, okay? Oh, I was gonna make them guess. Yep, sure. That's all right. If that's the information we will release, what's information we won't release?
Everything else.
Everything else. And this list is just an example. It's everything else. Yeah, Social Security number's not on there because that's just so basic. We won't release, oh, did you say that, Tara? We won't release your address. We won't release your email address, either your Clackamas email address or your personal email address, your phone number, your grades, whether your attendance, which is something, is up to your instructors whether they're tracking anyway. Your financial aid information, your account balance, anything. We are not gonna release that without your permission, okay? Good so far? Okay, I already said this. So we will not disclose this information without your permission. There are always exceptions. So some of the exceptions are school officials can release this information to other school officials if it's deemed under the umbrella of a legitimate educational interest. Okay, so Rhonda may come to me and say, I'm worried about a student. The student is Crystal, and Crystal is struggling a little bit, and I'm wondering, what should I do? Not, you wouldn't. I know, I'm just picking on you. Rhonda can do that, and she can have that conversation with me, and she can say Crystal's name because I have a legitimate educational interest in helping Crystal be successful in my role as registrar. I would work with Rhonda. That's okay. Okay, but it has to be a legitimate educational interest. We can't just walk around talking about students with no rhyme or reason. We have to have a good reason to do that. There are some other exceptions specified by CCC policy, which include research. Sometimes we provide data to the government, state and federal government, but we don't attach your specific name. It's aggregate data. So you as a whole group of tutors, we might send information about your overall GPA as a group of tutors, for example. So we can do that too without your consent. Okay. School officials include a person who's employed by CCC in those areas, a person acting in CCC's behalf. What are you doing as a tutor?
Representing. They acting on CCC's behalf?
Excellent. You are actually acting on behalf of the institution, and that's why you're going through this training, because you are now following under the umbrella of FERPA. Attorneys, auditors, they all fall under that umbrella also. Okay. So, I can't remember my slide order. Student workers as school officials, you have to have a defined role. You do. It's as a tutor. You have to sign a piece of paper. You're going to do that today. You're going to get the bookmark. It has a reminder about what is directory information. That's good enough for that. Legitimate educational interest. Again, this is about what are the specifics about what is a legitimate educational interest. So a specific task for a specific position. So there may be some things that well, not me because I'm the registrar, but There may be some faculty or staff on campus that have no legitimate educational interest because of their job assignment. There might be people, facilities. We have people who do an amazing job with our grounds, right? We have one of the most beautiful community colleges in Oregon. Those people don't have access to our student information, so they really don't have a legitimate educational interest in talking about students, right? Okay. And acts in the best educational interest of the student. Next, please. Okay, so we don't release this identifiable information about you, right? People will call and they will say, I need to know blah, blah, blah. It's usually a parent or a grandparent or a spouse or a child that says, I need to know fill in the blank, right? We don't release that information about you unless you have that consent. We have specifically trained staff who know how to perhaps ask the questions to help the person without giving that information about you, right? Sometimes we could take it up at a bigger level to help them. So a lot of those questions usually come to the Registration and Records Office. We will only release personally identifiable information electronically to your Clackamas account, right? We're not going to send detailed information about your grades or something in an unsecure environment, and we have deemed our Clackamas email account system to be secure. Next. Okay, so we've already covered we won't release information without your permission. Well, how do we get your permission? Does anybody know?
Ask.
What?
Sign a consent form?
Sign a consent form. We do have an official form that you could fill out that says, can I pick on you, Elizabeth? Do you go by Elizabeth?
Yes.
Elizabeth can come fill in the form and says, I, Elizabeth, would like my grades, my financial aid information, and my account balance to be shared with my dog. And so then when her dog calls, because apparently, pretty smart dog, calls and says, I need grade information and financial aid information and account balance for Elizabeth, we will look in our system and say, well, sure, Elizabeth said that was okay, let's share it with the dog. The dog also asks for her attendance. If she didn't indicate that on the form, we're not going to release it. That's not a good example because we don't track attendance anyway. Some instructors do, some don't. But you get my point, yes? So that's the information that we need written permission to release anything that's the non-directory information, right? Tara?
What if the police ask?
I'm going to get to that. Hold on. Good. Excellent. Moving ahead. Excellent. Excellent. Although directory information may be, even though by law there's sometimes we can release information, we might be cautious about it because if we think that it might harm a student, we might not release it anyway. So, okay, that's good. Okay, there's an opposite of the directory information, and if you sign a consent form and you don't actually have to do the form, a student can just write to us and we have their signature that says, please release information to so-and-so. What if you don't even want this directory information released? Can you do that? Yeah, how?
Written.
Yes, another form. We're very form driven in my world. Okay, if there are instances where students don't want to have even that information released. The examples of that might be a victim of domestic violence, a victim of identity theft. We are seeing an increase in requests because of identity theft. People who've been incarcerated and are starting over. It's within every right that they have to say, please don't release even this information about me. I usually have a heart-to-heart with those students because it does make navigating the college a little bit trickier because mostly they have to do everything in person because we need to see ID. But they certainly can ask to not even have that information released, and we will do that. Okay. Parents cannot obtain these forms. We don't put it on a website. We won't send it to a parent. If a student calls us and says they want the form, we'll mail it to the address on record. If a parent opens it when they get there, I can't control that. But we really don't give it to the parents. The form has to come from the student with the student's signature on it. Next. Okay. Security of records. So if any of you in your capacity as a tutor has access to educational records, you need to make sure they're secure when they're not right with you. That means locked in some kind of file cabinet, put away. Your computer screen should always be locked down so that if you step away, somebody can't come to it and access information that you have there. So I'm sure Carol will help with facilitating some of that in whatever role you have. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that someone can't just come in and access information, right? Next. Share information on a need-to-know basis. Refrain from sharing anecdotal information regarding individual students. And that was that lunch date I alluded to earlier. We did have this happen a couple of years ago. A bunch of staff went out for lunch. They started talking about a student. They never said the student's name. They thought they were following FERPA, but they gave enough information that other people could figure out who it was. Can't do that. You guys are going to meet with students you might know from other classes. You might have access to educational records for people that you know. When you leave your role as tutor, it needs to stay in your head. You can't go out and discuss it. You can't go home and say, wow, Brandy, well, she's, failing every class she's taking at Clackamas. So you can't do it. It needs to stay in your head. It's part of your role. It's a FERPA violation if you start talking about it, okay? Next, yes?
Have you already said what FERPA stands for?
Yes, I have. What does it stand for? They're so good. Yes, the bookmark is very helpful for answering that question. I'm very impressed. Okay, so where is I know it's in here, but back to Tara's other question about the police. There are two instances where people sort of can circumvent the go to Tara Spray because she's the registrar and custodian of your records, and that is the police and the media, because they know they're supposed to have my permission first, so they might go around me. The police have to follow the same law. In Clackamas County, actually in the whole metro area, I work with terrific law enforcement. I have only had one problem in 8 years. The guy who comes in with the gun and the badge and you have to give me records, and no, I don't. And so I made him sit and wait. That wasn't very nice, kind of petty. But for the most part, they know they have to have a subpoena or a warrant. And for the most part, most of the time when we're dealing with law enforcement, it's because we're trying to help a student, right? We've had some really tragic incidences in the last 3 years associated with students on our campus. It's my job to help facilitate that so that we can help those students, but it's my job to determine what we're doing and what we're releasing and make sure I'm covering that student's confidentiality in their records. So if you see a police officer and they're asking you information, what do? Send them to me. They should know that already, but send them to me. Huh? Don't run away because you're on the lam. The other organization that asks for information is the media. They're not as great about coming to me, but they shouldn't come to me. They should always go to our public affairs department. But they might come on campus. Last year, CNN was here when the Clackamas Town Center incident happened, and they wanted information. They wanted to talk to students. Can they talk to you about you as a student? Absolutely. You can talk about your experiences and what it means and how this is impacting you. If they ask you specific questions about an individual, be very careful. You could talk about if you're in a class with them, but as your role as tutor, you cannot. Okay? So you can talk with the media, but then refer them to public affairs, please. Okay. Next, sure. There's got to be more. The golden rule. When in doubt, don't give it out. If you have other questions, you have a bookmark. It has my email address and extension. If you get into a situation that's sort of uncomfortable because somebody asks you for educational record information and you think I'm not supposed to give out that information, refer them to me. I'll be happy to help them. Like I said, there are times when I can help people without releasing your information. And so let me try to tackle that. Questions? I just go fast. Tara.
Can I discuss a student's work with another tutor, and can I talk to their instructor?
Is it about the student?
I assume so.
Yes. Right?
Yes.
So I think what you're asking is, I'm working with, Tara's working with Brandy, and maybe because of Brandy's struggling a little bit, Tara wants to go talk to another tutor, or the instructor of the class that Brandy's in. What do you guys think? Is that a legitimate education? Is that a legitimate educational interest? Yes. Yes, that is. Can Tara go talk to 6 other instructors that Brandy's not enrolled in? No. Probably not. At that point, it would call me to ask because maybe there's something bigger at play that we should be looking into. Okay, hold on, wait for the mic.
So if, like, Brandy was struggling in, say, math, and I have a different math tutor, could I ask a question, not saying Brandy's name?
You bet.
And
Right.
if I do say Brandy's name, that would be bad because
It
then.
would be horrible. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm not going to get sued. Clackamas isn't going to get sued over that, probably. It's just be cautious, probably, right? There's always that probably. Just be cautious, right? Just say, hypothetically, I have a student who really can't understand this equation, and I'm having a hard time explaining that equation to them. So can you help me with that, right? You don't have to say, Brandy over there, see the one in the green dress? Yeah, that one. Yeah, she's really struggling, that kind of stuff. Keep it objective, keep it professional, exactly. Right. Good question. Other questions? Yes.
Rather than the actual police, what about campus
Oh, wait,
security?
I have to hold on. Wait for the mic. Sorry, my bad.
Rather than the police, what about dealing with campus security?
Campus security is part of there are employees of our campus, so they have a legitimate educational interest. They usually come to me if they need information anyway. So, because there's a whole bunch of, FERPA sounds really black and white, doesn't it? A lot of gray. So there's we try to keep some records separate, but they would come to me and ask. But sure, but they have a legitimate educational interest usually as well. Good question. Other questions? Wait for the mic. See, I got this.
So if I'm working with a student and they want to know, well, they like Crystal better, so they want to know when she's working. Is it okay to tell them when she's planning on being in the writing center?
That is a Carol decision as the overseer of the tutor center, because that's about scheduling and preferences. It's not about FERPA. That's not an educational record. That's just a student expressing interest in a different tutor. So, right?
And the answer is yes.
Yeah. Okay. Did I understand your question right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait for the mic.
The math lab, at least, that stuff is up on the wall, so it's not exactly a secret.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ours is online.
Okay. Okay. Good. Patricia.
If a student accidentally leaves their homework or something on the desk with their name and grades, what should I do?
I'm assuming that's a great question. I'm assuming, hopeful, that there's a process for where to store that information. Yeah.
So ask your supervisor, what do I do with this? Do not leave it on the desk.
Don't leave it on the desk. It used to be, for some of us who went to school quite a few years ago, our grades were posted based on our social security number, posted outside classrooms. So in order to know what you got on an exam, you had to go look by your social security number. I mean, now I'm old, right? They don't do that anymore. But sometimes instructors still leave piles of stuff for students. They can't do that either. So you can't. If you ever have an instructor who says, yeah, I'm just going to leave a stack of papers, you guys can come get it, let me know, because that's a violation of FERPA. You shouldn't ever be able to see other students' names and grades like that. They can give it to an administrative assistant and send you to go to that person to pick it up, right? What are the consequences of violating FERPA, do you think? Jail. Ooh, jail. Shoot, you know what? In all my time, I never considered that. Could I go to jail? We could lose our federal funding. So there are two primary consequences of violating FERPA. One is we could be sued by a student. Two, we could lose our federal funding. And losing our federal funding is primarily in the form of financial aid, which would end an institution, right? So, so there are severe consequences for violating FERPA. Do we violate FERPA at Clackamas? You bet. Does every institution in the country violate FERPA? You bet. It's usually accidental. It's almost always accidental. We do things with the best intention to help students, and sometimes we forget in that effort to do what's the best intention for our students, we forget some of the rules. If you have that little red flag that thinks, maybe I shouldn't do this, call me, send me an email so I can answer the question, okay? Yes, dear.
So you were saying that Clackamas could get in trouble. What would happen to the actual person that does it, even if it's an accident? Is there anything that could happen to them?
In my experience, when there have been FERPA violations, it's a great opportunity for me to re-educate that person or educate them for the first time if they haven't received this training. But usually it's then it would be escalated through the whole federal government process, and it would probably come down on me and the institution. But that's an opportunity for me to help whoever violated FERPA. We had an incident a couple years. Oh, I'm over my time. We had an incident a couple of years ago where parents came and said, "I really need to help my child. I need to know that they're in the hospital. They're very sick. They had an accident or something, and I need to get their student schedule." And so a person, oh my gosh, this person's been in an accident. I need to help, but FERPA, and I can't release the schedule, so I'll just put it in a sealed envelope and give it to them. Thinking they wouldn't open the envelope. That's a violation of FERPA. That person's going to go around the corner and open the envelope, all right? But her heart was absolutely in the right place. That gave me an opportunity to circle back with that staff member and talk about what that meant and how maybe we could better help that individual the next time. That's my role.
So in that case, what we do? Tar and feather.
In that case, we had a conversation about how we could help the student get well. That's where the focus needs to be. The energy needs to be on helping the student get well. When their student is well enough, then we'll tackle class schedule and dropping classes and all of that kind of stuff. We would take care of it on the back end and hold the student harmless, not in the front end. Okay, one last question, and then I have to turn it over to Amy. Brandy.
Is it okay to give out instructors or tutors' emails and phone numbers?
Is it okay to give out instructors' emails? Yes. Tutors' emails, if it's their Clackamas email, well, are you giving it to other students?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, as part of so that's part of your task. Your job as a tutor in a legitimate educational interest is to provide that information because you're helping the student, right? Yeah. Good questions. Very good group.
If I think a student's cheating, do I talk to their instructor or my supervisor about that?
You can do that. You would talk to I would go to your supervisor first. Again, that's not necessarily a FERPA issue, right? It's a conduct issue, but it's not necessarily a FERPA issue. The FERPA part of that is you're going to share information about the student to your supervisor. That's okay. You have a legitimate educational interest to do so. Good question. These are good plants. All right. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you so much.
Can I move now? Okay, thank you. Like, it's so hard for me to stand still. So thank you so much, you guys. Thanks for letting us do the whole taping in thing. Do use that bookmark if you put it by there's probably some already in the tutoring center, but put them by phones, make them easily accessible. Call me if you have any questions, and have a great term and year. So.